Sergeant's Greenscapes is a full-service lawn and landscape company located in Marion, Ohio. We specialize in making your home a beautiful place to enjoy your time. Fall is here, and that means the leaves are falling. This year, let Sarge and the troops clean up that mess for you. We have the equipment and strong backs to handle any amount of leaves you may have. So sit back, relax, and let us take care of everything. Mention that you heard about us on Scott Spears Now and receive 5% off any service. Also, ask about our senior citizen and veterans discounts. From landscaping to lawn care, mowing to leaf removal, Sarge and the troops can give you an outdoors to make your country proud. Find us on Facebook or call 740-751-5207. The Harding Center, located at 267 West Center Street in the heart of downtown Marion, is now accepting applications from adults, students, and seniors. The Harding Center is a beautiful historic building offering one-bedroom apartments and efficiencies at affordable rental rates. All utilities are included. Basic cable and internet are available. The Harding Center is equipped with an on-site laundry facility for its residents. The property is located on the Marion City Transit bus line, and off-street parking is available. The Harding Center is managed by Starfish Building, LLC, Lois J. Fisher and Associates. For more information, contact them at hardingcenter@gmail.com or give them a call at 740-223-3288. The Harding Center, a beautiful place to live in the heart of downtown Marion. This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. Today we are going to delve back in your childhood with a character I know you are sure to remember. Bozo the Clown. The Bozo the Clown, to be exact, we're going to be talking with is the Bozo the Clown from WGN Television, Joey Auria. Going to be a lot of fun. Did you know that aside from being Bozo, Joey was also on The Gong Show, The Chuck Barris Game Show, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, the late night program on NBC with David Letterman? He was on them all. And Bozo, for an amazing 17-year run, working with the likes of the legendary Roy Brown, Cookie, and Marshall Brodeen Wizzo. You are not going to want to miss this. It's very nostalgic. We even hear Bozo's voice creep out. You aren't going to want to miss this. A very unique and fun guy, Joey Auria, on Scott Spears Now. This is Scott Spears, and today we're going to have a lot of fun because we're going to delve into the annals of television and talk with one of the all-time great performers. From The Gong Show to The Bozo Show to David Letterman, Johnny Carson, he's done them all over the years. He is comic actor Joey Auria. Joey, how are you?
Okay, good to see you, Scott.
Yes, always good to talk with you. Glad to have you back on the show. And what's been new with you?
Well, let's see. Not really much. Just the day-to-day grind of an actor going from one audition to the next. I finished a small segment on a new Nickelodeon show called The Thundermans, which is about a family of superheroes. I play a school science fair judge. I've been doing some voiceover work on video games. Just finished one on a video game called... It'll take me a second to remember the name.
Well, you know, Joey, it's very interesting because people think that once you are established in this business, that you don't do auditions anymore, you're not, so to say, a working actor. People call you. Not necessarily true.
Well, no, that's not the case, especially because I'm coming from a local market. I was in Chicago. So coming out here to LA, it's like starting all over again. They have you fill out your height and your weight and your ethnic background. One I went to, they asked any disabilities. I wrote over 50 in Hollywood.
That is tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you, well, first of all, I don't know anything about this. How do you get scripts or auditions?
Well, you have an agent. I'm with a very, very nice agent out here in LA. They've mostly been handling me for voiceover work, which is cartoons and animation. In fact, I just finished a film called Jungle Shuffle, in which I am the voice of an accountant. And that I think that'll be a direct-to-video film. And let's see, and then I just finished doing several voices on the new Tom and Jerry series, which will be on the Cartoon Network. I'm the voice of Spike the cat. So,
when you go to an audition, what is that like? What's the process?
Basically, you basically get a notification from your agent. If they have the copy ahead of time, they send it to you, and you get it as an attachment with your email, and you download it and print it out so you can go over it a few times before you go to the audition. Then you drive to the audition. One of the reasons why I was a little late getting to you today, I wanted to apologize for that, was that I was at an audition all the way in Santa Monica, and if your listeners have heard anything about the 405 out here, they know that can literally turn into a parking lot, and that was the case. So it took me a lot longer to get back home to Pasadena.
When you figure all this in, the trips you take, the distances you have to drive, as in conjunction with the jobs you get, is it still worth it at this time in your career? Yeah, it's what I do. And fortunately, I like to drive. And in California, you have to like to drive. Do you miss Chicago at all?
Oh, I miss Chicago greatly. Both my wife and I talk about Chicago all the time. We have so many old friends in Chicago. We'll probably be trying to get out there, we hope sometime this winter, to visit with some friends.
Would you ever move back to the Midwest?
Oh, yes. In fact, my wife and I were discussing that just the other night. Now, our son works for Google, and he's a software programmer, and he lives up in San Mateo. And one of the things that he does is that he's working there, but if they ever had the opportunity for him to transfer to Chicago, we would probably try to go back too, because we'd miss the grandchildren too much.
God, I bet that's true. Joey, I want to go back to the start of your career here and kind of start with the very beginning. Why did you choose this career? When did it appeal to you?
Oh, it always did. I'm probably one of the first television babies. I mean, I grew up with the television right there in the house. And I liked television, and I liked the shows. And even as a small child, I felt this was what I wanted to do.
Acting is very interesting to me because I'm not an actor, but you have to become someone else. Now, there seems to be two methods to this that I've heard from other actors. And one is that you have to totally give yourself over to the person to become that part. And the other method is that there's always some of you in that character, no matter who it is. If nothing else, you kind of look like them. How do you approach an acting gig?
I approach it the same way Sir John Gielgud does. Someone once asked Sir John Gielgud what technique he used in creating a character, and he said, "I pretend." That's it.
How much of you is in there, though?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. It's very funny. There was a very thin line between me and Bozo, and I've spent the next 17 years erasing that line. I also did, for instance, I played Max Prince in the Neil Simon play Laughter on the 23rd Floor. And it was very interesting because I was going through a lot of what he was going through in regard to frustration with the fact that WGN was cutting our show down and was cutting our budget, and there was an awful lot of that anger and frustration that character was feeling, that I was feeling at the time. So many people really enjoyed my performance in that show.
Had Bozo not been canceled in the end, how long would you have continued playing him?
Oh, I don't know.
Were you tired of it?
No. You know, it's funny because back in 2000, before the show was canceled, we were moving into a period where we thought would be a very great time for the show. We had a director who we really liked. We had the kind of backup support from the stagehands that we needed. We had a camera crew that was really with us. I was writing more and more of the shows, and we really felt that we were going to have a really good season, and then they canceled us.
You know, it's interesting. Well, why did they cancel you? What reason was given?
Oh, they didn't give a reason. Well, the reason they gave was, of course, that we were no longer getting the viewers. But the basic, honest answer would be money. Local television stations don't have to produce in-house children's shows anymore. Now, in order to have an FCC license, a station has to produce so many hours of news, so many hours of community service broadcast, and so many hours of children's programming. And nowadays, they can get so much content for practically nothing. They don't have to spend the money to hire the talent, hire the writers, dedicate one studio to a show, costumes, props, cameramen, stagehands, directors, producers. They don't need all of that.
You know, it's kind of interesting because living in the Midwest, obviously, your Bozo was a staple here, as was Bob Bell's. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting for this reason. What you say there is certainly true, but we had local shows in Ohio, Flippo the Clown, Lucy's Toy Shop. For people who live here, they'll remember those. But
I had a very good friend, David Eaton, who did a lot of children's programming in Dayton.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there were a lot of great ones here, but those...
Good Time, I think, was the show he did.
Well, and you know, those went on for a while, but a lot of those started to bite the dust in the 70s, and if definitely not the 70s, the 80s. Because of cable television, the WGN Bozo was able to go on for a long time. And at one point, I remember the waiting list for tickets being some obscene amount of time. So when did that all begin to spiral the opposite direction?
Well, I'm sure that if WGN had been able to, they probably would have canceled the show when Bob Bell retired. Mm. But they had that waiting list, and that was a public relations nightmare. They couldn't cancel the show with, I think they had like 10 years of ticket requests. And the only reason that thing happened was because of a clerical error. When they did the show, they would say, if you'd like to come and see the Bozo show, send us a postcard. And people would send in postcards. Now, what they should have done was when they reached the maximum amount of tickets for that entire season, they should have said, we're stopping it. If you did not hear from us, please send in for a ticket next year. But they didn't. They just kept getting more and more postcards and stuffing them into a filing cabinet. And they would go through them, scrupulously to try to keep them in order. But after a while, they started filling up more and more drawers of that filing cabinet. And so that was why when Bob Bell retired, and he retired for health reasons, that they couldn't just end the show. They had to find a successor.
I remember when you started on Bozo in the 80s, Bozo was 5 days a week, 7 a.m., yes. And then it went to Sunday. Did that show ever rate in the rating? What were the ratings like on that show?
The ratings? Oh, our ratings were very good because we were in a prime time. People were getting ready to go to work and kids were getting ready to go to school. There was an article in TV Guide where a fellow commented that his family had been chosen to be one of the Nielsen families. They put the box on top of the TV and it would monitor what they watch. And this man wrote in this article that he believed that he was going to take television up several notches by making sure they only watched the most educational and intelligent shows on there. And the first day they set the box up on the TV, he's getting ready for work, his wife is getting ready for work, the kids are running in and out of the bedroom, and the TV is on, and the kids watch Bozo. And that was it. And he realized that he was putting that down. And we were getting very high ratings for those reasons. Kids wanted the TV on. Mom and Dad would have them eat their breakfast with the TV on, and Bozo would be on. And that was one of the reasons why they moved us to Sundays. That was a very valuable piece of television real estate, which is why the WGN Morning News Show is so highly rated. It's a great time. People are getting ready for work. They want to hear some news. They want to hear some local gossip or local goings-on about town. It's the perfect time to do that.
When the show moved to Sunday, did the ratings fall off?
Oh, yes. But, and they moved us to Sundays. They did not give us a good lead-in or a good follow-up, and we did not get a lot of publicity. It was a built-in obsolescence. The whole thing was, contrived so that eventually the numbers would drop and they would have a reason to cancel. But, they weren't going to do that until they ate up that waiting list.
Well, I want to go back here. We kind of got into it just through the art of conversation here, but how did you get the role as Bozo? You were fairly established doing other things at that time. The Gong Show?
I was doing The Gong Show. I had just done The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. My wife read an article in the Christian Science Monitor in which Al Hall said that they have had the worst time finding anyone who they felt was right for the part. They held auditions in Chicago. They came out to the West Coast and held auditions for 3 days at KTLA Studios and saw every mime, juggler, Venice Beach street entertainer, birthday party clown in the business. But they did not find what they wanted. And what they needed was somebody who could be Bob Bell to Roy Brown's Cookie. They needed an Abbott to his Costello, a Hardy to his Laurel, someone who understood the mechanics of old-fashioned burlesque and vaudeville comedy, because that's what Bob Bell and Roy had been doing all those years. And it was very funny, because when I heard about the auditions out here in LA, I didn't go, because I figured, well, I have no clown background, and I know a lot of guys who are mimes and jugglers and ex-circus clowns. I knew a lot of guys who would be perfect for this. And after they came and went, they still hadn't found a replacement for Bob Bell. And my wife read this article in the Christian Science Monitor basically saying that. They wanted somebody who knew vaudeville and burlesque who wasn't 80 years old. So I sent them the videotape for my appearance on The Tonight Show, And within a couple of weeks, I got a call from Al Hall, and they flew me out to Chicago to audition with Roy. And I discovered that the way they did the Bozo show was not like a typical television show where you had a script and you had to learn lines. You would get a one-page sheet of paper that would basically say, this is the situation, these are the props, Cookie wants to bake a cake, you help him. At the end of the thing, you take the cake out of the oven, hit Cookie with cake. And that was it. So basically, I would go there and we would go through the bit. Roy had half a dozen gags that he would want to do. And the minute he would mention a certain gag, I would know where he was coming from. So I would give him the right setups so he could get out his punchlines. So that was pretty much how the audition went. Anyway, a few weeks later, I heard back from Al Hall, and they offered me the job.
Going in to do that, it was kind of unique because, of course, Bozos were in a lot of local markets.
Yes.
But the Bob Bell Bozo, because of being up on the big WGN, was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Taking over for him, how did you come up with your Bozo?
Well, because because I was living in the West Coast and was not familiar with the show, well, his show. I grew up watching Bozo in New York when I was a kid growing up. The one thing that Al Hall, who was the producer, insisted upon was that I not watch Bob Bell or try to imitate Bob Bell in any way. They wanted a complete, clean slate, and so I just did it as a straight man, a vaudeville straight man, and that was pretty much what Roy Brown was.
He's the one with the ton of fun.
He's the ace with the crazy face.
A mile of smiles and a laugh and a half. He's the clown that won't let you down.
I'm focused with Bozo, I'm cuckoo by the clown. I'm radically, emphatically, really focused with Bozo. When he throws a pie, I really go bonkers. For the grand prize, I really go bonkers.
Me and all the guys,
we really go bonkers and talk about outrageous stickers, crazy games and races. I sing for Bozo, I'm hooting for the clown.
I'm Bobby and I'm nutty.
Pretty crazy, but I'm focused with Bozo.
And Wizzo so wacky.
He's really
The
bonkers.
professor rocks me.
He's really bonkers.
And Cookie's Cookie.
Way bonkers when he goes overboard and flies me into orbit.
Bonkers for Bozo.
I'm crazy about that clown. His gracious is outrageous, but wow!
I'm bonkers for Bose.
7 o'clock weekday mornings on Channel 9.
When you had to walk into Bob Bell's cast, who at that time included some pretty big names, you mentioned Roy Brown there as Cookie, and of course Marshall Brodeen, the legendary magician, as Wizzo. Mm-hmm. You know, they had worked with Bob. How were they with you in the early stages?
They were extremely kind. Roy Brown, I used to defer to Roy, and one day he took me aside and said, "You have to be the boss." He says, "I can't be funny if you're deferring to me." So, I mean, he insisted pretty much right away that I be the straight man and I take the lead. Roy knew the power of being a second banana, and he took pride in the fact that he was an excellent second banana. And he couldn't be an excellent second banana unless I was a good top banana.
What was it like to work with? Because I think in a lot of people's minds, he might have been the favorite character just simply for the kookiness and the fact that Wizzo was unique to the WGN show.
I tell people when I grow up, I want to be Marshall Brodeen. He is the happiest, most relaxed, kookiest guy you'd ever want to meet. He was a wild card, and 9 times out of 10, when Roy and I were working with Marshall, we would step back and we would give him as much rope as he needed, and then we'd have to reel him in.
You know, I know by the time the series ended, there were a lot of other great cast members that came on, but you did sadly lose Roy to illness, and Marshall did leave the show. How big a hit were those to take on the set, personally and just professionally, as the show went on?
Well, of course, it was a tremendous, tremendous loss to lose Roy. Roy was very ill, and we had a number of people come in and fill in for him while he would be recuperating. We had Adrian Zmed. You might remember him from T.J. Hooker with William Shatner. Or not?
Oh no, yes, I'm with you on that. Yes.
Okay. And he was a Chicago guy, and he was in town, and he filled in for several weeks as a clown. We brought in Michael Immel, who was an actor friend of mine from L.A., who happened to be in Chicago, and he became Spiffy. Then we held auditions. We hired two wonderful young ladies, Kathy Schenkelberg, who played Pepper, and Michelle Gregory, who played Tunya. And they were wonderful. They brought a whole new energy and dynamic to the show. And of course, Robin Urich, who played Rusty the Handyman, who gave us that lovable goofball that we were missing with Roy.
Was it hard to lose the magician?
Not really, no. Marshall was a great third character, and the magic was a great element to have for a number of the bits. We would, of course, have to have bits that would incorporate certain bits of magic in order to accommodate his character. But he continued to visit with us, even on not so much on a regular basis, pretty much up until the end.
People can hear your voice now, and they've heard your voice in a lot of things. Great voiceover actor, as we talked about earlier on. Where did the Bozo voice come from?
It was very funny. When I first started doing the character, I based it on a very good friend of mine out here on the West Coast, Milt Larson of the Magic Castle, who talked right about here. Every now and then, he would get sort of silly, and it would be, yup, right about there. And that was where I first started the Bozo voice. And then eventually it slipped into my own, which became a little more adenoidal than I really speak. And I kind of liked it because it was a wise guy voice, and there was a hint of Bugs Bunny in it, which I always thought worked well for Bozo, because Bozo was a smart aleck who basically caused trouble.
What was it like to go through all those ping pong balls on the grand prize game?
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The game was wonderful. People used to think that one thing that would drive me crazy sometimes is that people would say, "Is the game rigged?" And it's like, no. I mean, I would love it if we had a winner every single day. I mean, the prizes weren't coming out of my paycheck. So I mean, yeah, it was a fun game, and I'm amazed even to this day. In fact, I auditioned for a show, and one of the writers came out who told me that he and his sister had been on the show as kids, and his sister had played the game. So people still talk about it.
Would you ever do Bozo again?
I don't think so. Not because of not wanting to, but because I don't think that it would ever come up. It's the old James Bond, never say never. But right now they do have someone in Chicago who is wearing the suit and the wig and appearing in the parades out there.
Did you keep anything? Did you keep the costume?
No, I did not own any of the costume pieces. I did keep my nose. But the wig and the shoes and the costume were all the property of WGN. And I would never have any place to wear that suit because Bozo is a copyrighted character, so it's not like I could go and do a convention somewhere as Bozo.
I understand. Want to talk about the Gong Show, working with legendary Chuck Barris. Now, first of all, the gag on Chuck for years, of course. I don't know, maybe it's not a gag. We've all been rolling with this for years, that he worked for the CIA and maybe offed a few people. Well, what's your take of Chuck Barris?
I think he's probably one of the most clever and savvy showmen in television. I don't know what he's doing lately, but I have to say that back in the mid-'70s to early '80s, he pretty much owned the airwaves. He had game shows on practically every network. The Newlywed Game, the Dating Game, the Gong Show, the 99-cent beauty pageant. He was cranking those things out.
Do you believe his story?
I read the book. I don't know. I mean, he never gave me any indication when I was on the set of the Gong Show that he was a spy. But then again, if he was a really good spy, he wouldn't.
Did you like the Gong Show?
I loved the Gong Show. It was very funny because I was taking an improv comedy class at the time. And one of my classmates came in and announced that they were so desperate to get acts because they were using so many acts on the Gong Show. I mean, the show was on, I think, 3 days a week, and I think a couple of times in the evening. That they were willing to hire union actors to just come on, do a stupid act, get booed off the stage, and collect after minimum, which back then was $150, which was also my rent in those days. So I used to figure, if I can do one bad act a month, I've got my rent covered. So I would come on and I would do an act. I did one act where I had a large matchbox, and then I would have the off-stage sound man play a recording of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing the Hallelujah Chorus at 78, and I would conduct it like it was a flea choir. And that got me booed off the stage. I did an act where I had the audience play, where I had the band play Begin the Begin, and I beat a chair to splinters with an axe. I mean...
You know, the Gong Show was so different. Why do you think it's never made a comeback?
I don't know. I heard that they tried to bring it back for cable a year or two ago, but I never heard anything else about it. I think certain things are right for their time.
I agree with that. Johnny Carson, that must be certainly a memorable moment for you. A lot of people credit that show as being the highlight of their career. Memories of Johnny Carson.
Well, I was hired to do my act, the Dr. Flamo act, by Johnny Carson's casting director, a man by the name of Jim McCulley. And I showed up at NBC and rehearsed it, and McCulley gave me some notes, and just as I finished and was blowing out the candles, Johnny Carson walks in wearing a plaid shirt and a pair of jeans, and he walks up to me and shakes my hand and says, "How do you do? I'm John Carson." And I said, "Uh-huh." And he went, "I just got here. I hear you're a very funny young man. I'm looking forward to seeing your act." And that was it. And then when I did the Gong Show, when I did the Tonight Show, it really broke him up because he hadn't seen the rehearsal. In fact, you can probably still find my Dr. Flamo on the Tonight Show. I think that's still up on YouTube.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
You know, one of the great things about working at WGN during that big cable boom and during the 80s and early 90s, were there were some substantial names at WGN. Siskel and Ebert.
Yes.
Do you have memories of them?
Yeah, and it's very funny. They had their dressing room across the hall from mine, and when Roy and I would be leaving, they'd be coming in. And actually, it was Roger Ebert who looked at us leaving, and he went, "It's amazing. A thin one and a fat one leave, and a thin one and a fat one show up."
Sad we've lost both of them.
Yes, yes.
Go ahead.
Ebert was very funny. I was also backstage with him during one of the Emmy Awards. He hosted the Emmys one year with Oprah Winfrey.
Well, that's an interesting pair, and I guess they dated. It came out.
Yeah.
And go figure. Harry Carey.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any memories of him? I know there were a few things you guys did together.
Well, yeah, he was involved. We would show up to his restaurant. Harry did a sort of a charity event up at his restaurant, Harry Carey's, and Roy and I would show up and make an appearance there. He was always very nice. I was up at the booth at Wrigley a number of times. One time I came up there, and Steve Stone was with him, and Steve Stone always smoked these big cigars. And we're there, and the cameras are on, and Stone pushes the cigar in my face, and he goes, "Care for a cigar, bozo?" And I said, "Well, you know, Steve, there's nothing like a good cigar. And that is nothing like a good cigar." And Harry Carey almost fell off his chair. He laughed so hard. Because Harry could not stand his cigars.
Was Harry the real deal? What you saw was what you got?
I think so. He'd be backstage with us whenever we would do a charity event or some of that. He was always just a happy guy who loved what he did.
You know, Joey, it's kind of interesting. You have had a great career. I mean, certainly anybody who's done the Gong Show. You did a great bit that I saw on YouTube today with David Letterman, where you were giving him a tour of Chicago.
Yes.
That was a great. Well, tell me about it. Do you have memories of that? That was a very funny bit.
That was fun. Well, Letterman came to Chicago in fact, he did his show from the Chicago theater. And one of the things, one of his writers, who I guess was a Chicago guy, thought it would be funny to have Bozo give him a tour of the city. So we literally spent the whole day in a small van driving all over Chicago, visiting various points of interest.
What I was getting into there, being on Johnny Carson, which at that time, you know, there were 3 channels. It was a big deal. Gong Show, same thing. The movies you've gotten to do, the great voiceovers you've done, certainly the stage work you've done. Does it ever bother you that when you go on the internet and search your name at this time, and your career is certainly not over, but if you go on and search your name, that primarily, first and foremost in people's minds, you're going to be associated with Bozo?
No, because that's probably the largest chunk of my career. 17 years as Bozo the Clown. So I'm not surprised that takes up the largest portion of my identification.
Did you like being a clown? You say you were not a clown. Do you feel you became a clown?
Roy Brown used to say, "We're not clowns. We're comedians. We're clowns in the respect that W.C. Fields and Ed Wynn and those guys were clowns. Circus clowns are a silent act because when you're playing in an arena, nobody can hear any dialogue. And we were just comedians in clown suits. I've done a few clown conventions. I was in Vincennes, Indiana, a year ago with Robin Urich for the Red Skelton clown school, and we taught some comedy technique. Mostly what I did was just tell stories about working with Roy and Marshall and Robin Urich. But we did some technique on pie throwing and things like that. I did a one-man show once on Ed Wynn, and I got notes afterwards from Keenan Wynn, Ed Wynn's son. And he basically said, the thing that you have to remember about Ed Wynn was that he was a clown. And it's true. He was a physical clown, but he was very verbal. And there are verbal clowns and there are non-verbal clowns. And most of your verbal clowns were characters that were in burlesque and vaudeville, because they had to be verbal.
How would you like to be remembered years from now, when people look back at the body of work?
That I made them laugh.
You know, it's very unique. As we have said, a lot of people played Bozo, and certainly there was a creator of Bozo, and there, of course, was a big dispute about that, but we'll leave that for people to search if they want to. But Bozo's around for a long time, and a lot of people have done Bozo, and I've met a few Bozos, and Bozo still is there occasionally at book signings and things of that nature, if the approval's given. The thing that I think made your Bozo different, and this is just personal, is that it was the personality. So although they still may pay somebody in Chicago to put the suit on, I think there's a lot more to it than that. And I think somebody putting the suit on does not make Bozo.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
there have been some very unique fellows who have played Bozo over the years. And I think that that was one of the reasons why Al Hall did not want me to imitate Bob Bell. Bob Bell had his own unique style. And I like to think I had my own unique style as well.
I think you did, and I think the thing that maybe is most important to me is that but Bozo is such a popular figure in pop culture that if there ever was some kind of reunion, you know, I think yours would be the one that people do remember because of the convergence of cable television partly, but also, and being the last one in production. But
That's
also
pretty much it. I was the last clown standing.
But it was I mean, you don't last that long. I'm sure if you had came in after Bob Bell and they would have went, boy oh boy, this is wrong, you would have been going. So to have what was it, 17 years, 16 years?
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely something to that. So I hope, if nothing else, one more time we get to see you as Bozo. Do something.
Well, that would be nice. If asked, I wouldn't turn it down.
There we go. Joey, go ahead.
You mentioned if I hadn't been good. I have a story. About 3 months into doing the show, I got a call that the general manager wanted to see me. And he invited me up to his office. He sat me down. He opened up his desk drawer, pulled out 4 letters, and tossed them across the desk to me and said, "Read one." So I said, all right. So I opened up the first envelope, and there was, "Dear WGN, we hate this new Bozo. He's horrible. Bring back Bob Bell." And he said, "The other 3 are just as bad." And I went, "Uh-huh." And he said, "This is terrific." He said, "We had decided that if we got under 100 hate letters, we'd keep you. If we got over 200 hate letters, we'd start to question whether or not we made the right choice. If we got over 300 hate letters, we were going to fire you."
Of course, I'm sure. Tell me about the first time you met Bob Bell.
Bob Bell. I never met Bob Bell until about 5 or 6 months into my first season. He was standing backstage, and he had a suit on, and I found myself standing over by him waiting to go on for an introduction. And as I'm standing there, I notice him smiling at me, and he says, "How's it going, Bose?" And I said, "Oh, very well, sir, very well indeed." I said, "You'll have to excuse me. We're about to do a game that we call the grand prize game." And I walked away. And as I walked away, he turned to one of the stagehands and went, "He doesn't know who I am." So now I was worried. So after we did the grand prize game, I'm backstage with Roy Brown, and I'm saying, "The guy in the gray suit, is he some Tribune executive I should know?" And he went, "That's Bob Bell." So that was it. So that was it. The only time I had ever seen Bob Bell was in a couple of recordings of the Bozo show, and he was in makeup.
Because he lived, even though he did retire for health reasons, he lived quite a while after you took over Bozo, and some things were even done together. Did he ever say, "I like it, I dislike it"? Did he ever have any comments on your Bozo?
Any notes for me?
Yeah.
No, not any. The only time I spent any real time with him was during the 25th anniversary show that we did at the Medina Shrine Temple in downtown Chicago. And we'd be backstage, and he'd throw one-liners at me, and I'd throw them back to him. And he laughed once. He said, "Well, I see," and he turned to Roy and says, "Well, I can see why you hired him." So that was it.
Well, I have to tell you, Joey, this has been a lot of fun for me. I have enjoyed these conversations because, honestly, I haven't heard a lot of these stories, and I don't think most people have, and it's a really unique treat because, as I say, WGN went into everybody's home, certainly The Gong Show, The Tonight Show as well. You're very well remembered in the television community.
Well, thank you so much.
I want to ask you one favor, though, before we sign off here. I know you can't do Bozo. Can you sign off in that voice today?
Well, usually I would just say, "Well, bye-bye." And now it's time for the Grand March!
The legendary Joey D'Auria. Please come back. Thank you so much.
All right, good to talk with you, Scott.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Scott Spears Now. I know I certainly have. When I was a child growing up in Ohio, cable first coming in, the Bozo that I grew up with, 7 a.m. weekday mornings, was Joey D'Auria. So it's a great thrill for me to get to talk to him. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. This was kind of a selfish episode, but it was a lot of fun. We are out of here for this episode. I hope you come back with us in the future. By the way, you can catch us on the internet by going to Facebook and searching Scott Spears Now, or emailing me, osukid2006@aol.com. But until next time, this is Scott Spears, heading for the dugout.